This video will cover cognitive development in adolescence. Specifically, we'll look at Piaget's formal operational stage, describe adolescent egocentrism, information processing research, developmental changes in language, types of education, and high school dropout rates. So let's start with Piaget's formal operational stage. According to Piaget, around 11, people enter the formal operational stage in which they develop the capacity for abstract thinking and systematic scientific reasoning. In Piaget's view, adolescents become capable of hypothetical deductive reasoning, a problem-solving strategy in which they begin with a hypothesis and then deduce logical, testable inferences from that hypothesis. Unlike concrete operational children who begin with reality in making predictions about a situation, adolescents are able to begin with possibility and proceed to reality. One way that Piaget tested this is with his pendulum problem. So adolescents are given a pendulum apparatus, several lengths of string, and several pendulum weights. They then think about variables that could affect the speed with which a pendulum swings through its arc. They will then isolate and test each variable, as well as testing the variables in combination. Eventually, they're able to deduce that the weight of the object, the height from which it's released, and how forcefully it is pushed have no effect on the speed with which the pendulum swings through its arc. Only string length makes a difference. Piaget also found that adolescents become capable of transitivity, and that refers to the relationship between two elements being carried over to other elements that are logically related to the first two. So for example, if Maria is shorter than Alicia and Alicia is shorter than Caitlin, who is the shortest? Maria. Right? So in early adolescence, people become better than school-age children at analyzing the logic of propositions, regardless of their content. But these gains are gradual from childhood on, and that calls into question the emergence of a new stage of cognitive development at adolescence. Well-educated adults often have difficulty with formal operational tasks, and people are most likely to think abstractly and systematically in situations in which they've had extensive guidance and practice in using such reasoning. Individuals in tribal and village societies rarely do well on tasks that are typically used to assess formal operational reasoning, which raises the possibility that formal operational thought may be a culturally transmitted way of thinking that is specific to literate societies and is taught in schools. Adolescents' ability to reflect on their own abstract thoughts, combined with physical and psychological changes, leads them to think more about themselves. From a Piagetian perspective, a new form of egocentrism or heightened self-focus arises in which adolescents attributed unlimited power to their own thoughts. They may have difficulty distinguishing their own and others' perspectives, and two distorted images of the relation between themselves and others occur. First is the imaginary audience, and this refers to adolescents' belief that they're the focus of everyone else's attention and concern. However, some say it's not so imaginary if they're often on social media, posting every little thing. So imaginary audience, this is like where you have a zit and you're worried, oh my gosh, everyone, everyone's noticing my zit, and they think I'm ugly and I can't go to school, kind of thing. In reality, probably a lot of other teenagers are just worried about their own zits, as opposed to, focusing so much on yours. The other error is the personal fable, and that is adolescents' belief that they're special, unique, and invulnerable, This may be why they often think others can't understand their thoughts and feelings, and is thought to contribute to why they engage in risky behaviors. So kind of like, you're the hero of your own story, right? Your personal fable. So you think, you're special, you're neat, you're unique. Other people just don't understand. And thinking that, your bad things are unlikely to happen to you, right? Yeah, bad things, they happen, but to other people, not to me, right? I'm the main character. Well, that's not necessarily fact. So let's go over to information processing. So information processing theorists refer to a variety of specific mechanisms, including components of executive function, as underlying the cognitive gains that are made in adolescence. Each mechanism promotes advances in others, an increase in working memory, improvements in inhibition, gains in selective and flexible attention, and improvements in cognitive self-regulation. Researchers regard metacognition, or thinking about our thinking process, as central to adolescent cognitive development. Although adolescent self-regulation or ability to control impulses is better, it can still fail when they're under high stress, or when their mental functions are taxed. Inductive reasoning, or bottom-up reasoning, is when specific observations or specific comments from those in authority are used to draw more general conclusions. And that emerges in childhood. And it's much more prone to errors, right? Much more likely that there are possible errors in specifics that can be overgeneralized quite easily. With deductive reasoning, on the other hand, which does begin in adolescence, this is reasoning that begins with a general principle and then proposes specific conclusions. And this is also referred to as top-down processing. This is the type of reasoning that is used when you do proofs in math, right? So we have much less risk of having an error in our conclusions when we use deductive reasoning, because we are going from general to specific instead of specific to general. Adolescents tend to use intuitive thought over analytic thought, though. And this is referenced in the dual process model. So that refers to having two distinct networks for processing information, intuitive and analytic. So with intuitive thought, this is our automatic, unconscious, really fast way of thinking. It's much more experience and emotional based compared to analytic thought, which is much more deliberate, rational, conscious, and honestly, it takes more time. It's slower. So intuitive thinking generally is easier, and it's very commonly used in everyday life, particularly by children and adolescents, because again, easy, fast. And so we tend to rely on it. And let's be honest, adults rely on it often as well. But when you're faced with, making big decisions, it often is advantageous to take a more analytic approach, right? Rationally, deliberately consider the advantages and disadvantages of a situation before acting. Education. The transitions from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school can be difficult for students academically and socially, as teachers are often seen as less supportive and schools become larger, less personal. Many factors influence students' academic achievement. Family beliefs and expectations play a role, but so do students' friends. If an adolescent has high achieving, motivated friends, then they are more likely to be the same, but the reverse holds true as well. Sex influences success. Females generally tend to earn higher grades, to try harder, and be more intrinsically motivated compared to males, generally speaking. Female students also tend to exhibit more anxiety about school and trying to please teachers. Male students are more likely to be confident and to not value adult feedback regarding academic performance. There is also a subset of females who identify with sexualized gender stereotypes that girls should be sexy rather than smart, and they tend to be less motivated in school, show less desire to master concepts, and to be more skeptical of the usefulness of an education. Male and female high school students spend similar amounts of time in class doing homework and working. Male students generally spend more time on media and communication activities, playing sports and sleeping. Female students generally spend more time on leisure and religious activities and on grooming. These are generalities, so take them with a grain of salt. Dropout rates. The status dropout rate refers to the percentage of 16 to 24-year-olds who are not enrolled in school and do not have high school credentials, whether that be a diploma or a GED. The dropout rate has decreased from 12% in 1990 to 6.1% in 2016. The dropout rate is lower for white students than Black and Hispanic students, as shown in the graph. However, the gap has narrowed. For males, the dropout rate went from 12% in 1990 to 7.1% in 2016. For females, it was also 12% in 1990, but dropped even more by 2016, down to 5.1%. So good news, decreases in high school dropout rates, decrease in the in ethnic, racial differences in dropout rates as well. Although with COVID, I'm not sure exactly if that's still the case. Reasons for dropping out. If people are experiencing major obstacles, things like being in foster care or the juvenile justice system, if you have a physical or mental health condition, if you need special education services, if you're experiencing abuse or homelessness, things like that, definitely large risk factors. We also have some factors that are more adolescent specific. So things like an individual's race, ethnicity, and age play a role. Family specific characteristics include things like poverty, single parenting, having a large family size, and stressful transitions. And then community factors, things like living in an unsafe neighborhood where there's gang activity and a lack of social services, all increase risk of dropping out. So again, there's by no means guarantees of dropping out, but the more risk factors you have, the higher at risk you are. So definitely important to use both preventative as well as intervention strategies that target various systems, various factors, so aimed at those major obstacles as well as more specific factors to fully address dropping out issues. And that brings us to the end of cognitive development.